Ambassador Kethavar's mandibles clicked nervously as he reviewed the reconnaissance report one final time. The holographic display showed Xerion Prime in all its deadly glory, a world where sulfuric acid rained from crimson skies, where temperatures swung from -40 to +60 Celsius within standard cycles, and where the very ground trembled with seismic activity that could shatter reinforced titanium. "The Galactic Council's decision is final," he announced to the assembled delegates, his voice carrying across the chamber with practiced authority. "The humans have violated 3 separate trade agreements and illegally established mining operations in restricted sectors. As punishment, they will be relocated to Xerion Prime." A collective shudder ran through the alien assembly. The Zephyrians' crystalline forms dimmed with what could only be described as sympathy. Even the usually stoic Mantari delegation shifted uncomfortably in their biopods. "Surely," ventured Delegate Yithra, her tentacles writhing with distress, "this is excessive? No species has ever survived more than a solar rotation on Xerion Prime. The atmospheric composition alone would dissolve most organic matter within cycles." Kethavar's compound eyes glittered. "The humans claim to be adaptable. Let us test that claim. 10,000 volunteers, or criminals, the distinction matters little, will be transported there immediately. If they survive one standard, here we will consider alternative arrangements." What the Galactic Council didn't understand was that to humans, impossible was merely another word for challenge accepted. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the transport ship Resilience, watching Xerion Prime grow larger in the viewport. The planet's surface writhed with volcanic activity, and the acid cloud swirled in patterns that reminded her of the hurricanes she'd weathered back on Earth. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Zhang Wei. Zhang raised an eyebrow. "Captain, that planet just spat lava at our ship. The hull temperature warnings haven't stopped screaming since we entered the system." "Exactly." Elena's smile was the same one her ancestors might have worn before climbing Everest or sailing into unknown waters. "It's angry. I like that in a planet." The first months were brutal. The initial landing killed 3% of the colonists outright when their landing pods were dissolved by the acid rain. Another 7% succumbed to the toxic atmosphere before the atmospheric processors could establish safe zones. But humans did what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. They adapted. They learned to predict the acid rain by watching the behavior of the silicon-based organisms that somehow thrived in this hell. They discovered that the planet's magnetic field fluctuations followed patterns that could be used to generate power. When their prefabricated shelters melted, they built new ones from the planet's naturally occurring crystal formations, which proved remarkably resistant to the corrosive environment. Dr. Sarah Chen, the mission's chief xenobiologist, made the breakthrough that changed everything. She realized that Xerion Prime's harsh conditions had produced some of the most efficient chemical processes in known space. The acid that dissolved their equipment could be refined into incredibly potent fuel. The unstable ground contained rare minerals that were worth their weight in antimatter. "We're not just surviving," she announced during the 6-month progress report transmission to Earth. "We're thriving. This planet isn't trying to kill us, it's trying to make us stronger." 1 year later, Ambassador Kethavar stared at his viewscreen in disbelief. Where Xerion Prime had once been a barren, hostile wasteland, geometric patterns now covered significant portions of the surface. Massive crystalline structures rose from the ground like frozen flowers, and a faint green aurora danced through the atmosphere. "What are those?" he demanded of his intelligence officer. "Cities, Ambassador. The humans have built cities. And sir, you need to see this." The image shifted to show a flag planted on the highest peak of what had once been an active volcano. The banner bore Earth's blue and green colors, but it was clearly made from Xerion Prime's own materials. It seemed to shimmer with an inner light that pulsed in harmony with the planet's magnetic field. "They've named the planet," the intelligence officer continued, his voice barely a whisper. "They're calling it New Gaia. And sir, they're not just surviving the acid rain anymore. They're using it to power their cities. The transmission from New Gaia reached the Galactic Council chamber. 3 days later, Captain Vasquez appeared on the holographic display, standing in what looked like a vast greenhouse filled with impossible plants that seemed to photosynthesize the planet's toxic atmosphere. "Greetings from New Gaia," she said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had just proved the impossible possible. "We wanted to thank the Council for this incredible opportunity. Zerion Prime has taught us things about survival and adaptation that we never could have learned on our comfortable worlds." She gestured behind her, where humans could be seen, working alongside creatures that definitely weren't human. Silicon-based life forms that had apparently been living in the planet's crust for millennia. "We've established diplomatic relations with the indigenous Pirathi," Vasquez continued. "Turns out they've been waiting for someone tough enough to survive their planet's surface. They're eager to join the galactic community, with humanity, as their sponsors." Ambassador Kethvar's mandibles hung open. The humans hadn't just survived. They'd turned a death world into a thriving colony, and made first contact with a previously unknown species in the process. "Oh, and one more thing," Vasquez added, her smile carrying a hint of steel. "About those trade agreements we supposedly violated? The Pirathi have confirmed that their planet's mineral rights were never legally transferred to the Council. We'll be expecting your mining operations to cease within 30 standard cycles." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. 3 months later, New Gaia was admitted to the Galactic Council as an independent world, with humanity serving as their official representatives. The flag that now flew outside the council chambers bore the blue and green of Earth, but it was woven with the living crystal of Zerion Prime, a symbol of what happened when you underestimated human stubbornness. As Ambassador Kethvar learned, there was no such thing as the harshest planet alive when humans were involved. There were only planets that hadn't met the right humans yet.